Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is a Democrat of Texas. She serves on the Oversight Committee, and she joins me now. Congressman, one of the things that's interesting about this, and particularly on the tariff front, is we have a very different system than the UK with many more veto points. It's much harder when you're elected as a new government in the US to just like get your budget through and start doing it, right? There's a whole bunch of different things. But on tariffs, because of the law and the statutory authority the president's been granted, he can kind of unilaterally do a lot of this stuff while you and Congress just basically watch.
Yeah, you know, my only hope is that we can rid ourselves of Donald Trump half as quickly as the UK got rid of their failed leadership. That is the only hope that I could have, but something tells me that he will stick around for the entire 4 years. But you're absolutely right. And as someone who serves on the Agriculture Committee, one of the things that we saw is that our soybean farmers specifically suffered so much under these tariffs last time, and it wasn't as widespread as what he's proposing this time. The fact that we have Americans that are waking up and saying, wait a minute, are you saying that tariffs are going to negatively impact me? Are you saying that we're going to have to pay for this? It's kind of like that wall that we're still waiting on Mexico to build, right? That they're going to pay for it. No, we're going to pay for it. We're going to be the ones that are suffering. And for those that thought that inflation was bad, even though it has come down, even though that it is honestly, cooled off here a lot quicker than it cooled off in the rest of the world, let me just tell you, it's time to buckle up, Buttercup, because it is about to be on and popping if for some reason he gets half of this done. And right now, looking at the henchmen that he is trying to put into his administration, we are on track to see a lot of these negative things impact our economy.
Now, one of the, in a weird way, I would say the best case scenario probably for the country and also weirdly politically for Trump would be to basically just not do it and say he did, you know, the kind of like sort of just lie about it, essentially. And I do think there's some indications of that. So he just posted about Claudia Sheinbaum, who's, of course, the new president of Mexico. He says he had a wonderful conversation. She agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into the United States, effectively closing our southern border. I should note, this has basically already happened. It's been happening for about 8 months now. Border crossings have been near zero, right? They've essentially zeroed out. We also talked about what to be done to stop the massive drug inflow of the U.S. Very productive conversation. Like, again, no one knows. This was so weird about these. He says, I'm going to do this massively destructive thing. Basically, everyone on Wall Street and the Republican Party is like, he won't. And now we just sort of find out, like, will he, won't he? Will he do it for a few days and not? That's sort of where we are.
Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, he instituted tariffs not as deeply as what he's proposing this time, but he did do it last time. And so I don't see why he would necessarily change course, because according to him, the people definitely wanted his type of economics back, not actually realizing that it was Obama's economics. And I will point out, just like you said, you know, when the Mexican president responded to him, what she said was, listen, this is not only going to cause you a problem as it relates to trade, because, you know, two can play that game, but this is also going to cause you an issue as it relates to immigration. And she was highlighting basically that she has been working in a cooperative way to make sure that we could stop some of those crossings at the southern border.
In terms of the other part of the agenda that they really have telegraphed and promised is mass deportation. They've been very clear about this. They think they have a mandate to do it. They say they're going to start on day one. Tom Homan, who is the director of ICE and oversaw child separation under Donald Trump, he was down at the border today for a big visit. You said something I thought was interesting about Homan. Basically, he has this sort of nebulous border czar position, which he'll work in the White House, that he should have Senate confirmation, that he should have a Senate confirmed post if he's going to wield the kind of power that they seem to be indicating that they're going to give him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, considering the fact that this was supposedly one of the top issues for the American voters, and you're talking about a guy who is threatening to incarcerate people, you're talking about a guy that is talking about, you know, looking at migrants, and, you know, I don't know what type of parameters, if any, he's going to have other than get rid of people that don't look like they belong here. Like, I don't really understand. But when we're starting to talk about something that, number one, is going to impact real lives, whether we're talking about incarcerating them, whether we're talking about putting them into these camps that they're talking about, whether we're talking about the fact that literally this is yet another negative impact that we need to brace for as it relates to our economy. This is someone that should not be given this amount of power and is not then having to go through the rigorous, situation that anyone else would have to go through if they want to be in the cabinet. And I think that the Senate should have to confirm him, which means that hopefully we would get an FBI background check on him as well.
In terms of, obviously, the Senate is who confirms nominees. The House plays no role in that. But the House, we're getting near what the final numbers are going to be. We're going to talk about that in just the next block. But it's going to be a very narrow majority, narrower than it was, it looks like. And I as a member of the House, I mean, I guess it's not fun to be in the minority, but this last House majority was so wildly dysfunctional with a very thin margin. Are you expecting anything different this time around?
No. It is the one thing that I've been telling people, listen, the one thing we can count on is that, number one, they can't count. And number two, the fact that they don't get along with one another. So those are the things that we are holding close to the chest. You know, I'm really excited about Derek Tran. And we are watching another race in California right now. And he is pulled ahead as well, Adam Gray. So we're hoping that we actually end up having more members of the House this 119th than we actually had in this 118th. So we're currently on track to have 214, which is the exact same number that we had throughout the 118th. And if we can pick up this last seat with Mr. Gray, then we'll be looking at having 215. And we know that Donald Trump has plucked out a number of members already, which means that, you know, we may get as close as 217 to 215 if everything kind of works out, which is something that they have never had to endure in the 118th.
All right, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. A lot of them don't like each other. That is a statement of fact. That's true. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.